What's going on, guys? Doomwake here, and welcome back to another discussion video on the channel. And we're going to be discussing something very, very important and very near and dear to my heart today, and that is the upcoming June 30th banned and restricted announcement. If you have been living under a rock over the past couple of months, Izzet Prowess it's kind of a problem, right? We sort of knew this going into the regional championship cycle with Minneapolis and Hartford, but a lot of people at that time were like, well, we can maybe give it a little bit of time, let them see if the metagame will adjust. Turns out it didn't adjust, it just got worse. So the first slide that I want to show you guys is the standard metagame from the most recent Pro Tour that took place in Las Vegas this past weekend. Izzet Prowess clocking in at 42.3% of the metagame, which is higher than any of the regional championships. This is the highest it's been ever since Corey Steelcutter was printed in Tarkir Dragonstorm. 42.3%. Now, understandably, and I'm not going to argue with this is just facts, the win rate wasn't super high. It was about 48 or 49%. But understandably, when you have a deck that has this high of a play rate, things are going to sort of plateau off. It's going to be a lot more even. You would never expect a deck that is this high of a play rate to have some obscene win rate, because that means more than half of the people that are playing it are winning more than half their games. But in any case, 42.3% play rate is ridiculous. We haven't seen numbers like this even with Nadu, right? Nadu was a Pro Tour that happened last year, and I want to say the play rate was in the 30s, like maybe high 20s, low 30s, something like that. So did not even get close to this play rate, 42.3%. And it's very clear that something needs to be done. Azorius Omniscience coming in second place, 19.9, Mono Red 10.9. Mono Red, to be fair, was the eventual winner of the tournament. The top 8 of the event was 4 Mono Red and 4 Izzet Prowess. And it's pretty funny how the brackets broke down, where it was Izzet Mirror, Red Mirror, and then Mirror, and then the only match that wasn't a mirror match was the finals, which Ken swept Ian 3-0 on Mono Red versus Prowess. So that was the PT metagame. Again, I want to show you this just because it looks funny. This was the graph from yesterday's watching the meta video. I just like the way this looks. Izzet Prowess 34.9%, Mono Red 33.3%. I think it's very clear that we got something has to be done. We have to address these issues. Now, the biggest question on everybody's mind is, what is the best way to do that? And there, I think, are a couple of cards that we can maybe have a little bit of a conversation on. So the first card that I would like to discuss today is Corey Steelcutter. This one is probably, for me, the easiest slam dunk, get it out of here. There's basically no doubt in my mind that Corey Steelcutter is going to be banned. I don't even know what I would do if it didn't get banned at this point. The card is completely warping the entire metagame around it. It is not only a card that is a source of card advantage, right? If you're playing against a mid-range or control deck, and they can do a very good job of one-for-one-ing your threats with stuff like cut down, go for the throat. Traditionally, Prowess's big issue is that they don't have a consistent stream of threats, but Cutter just solves that and helps you grind through all of these removal spells with basically no effort whatsoever. The card also is extremely aggressive. For some reason, the token has Trample and Prowess and Haste. Don't really know what they were thinking there. So, yeah, there's this combination of allowing you to grind through basically everything on top of probably the most aggressive threat in the deck, almost sometimes even more so than Slickshot Show Off, because it has built-in Trample, makes it, yeah, I mean, it's very obvious. Cutter is the biggest issue here. That's the elephant in the room. We don't even need to talk about Cutter anymore. That's the end of the conversation. Cutter 100% needs to get banned. So, now that we have removed something from Izzet, the big question is, do you want to ban something else from Izzet to make sure that, basically, just to make sure that this deck is no longer a problem? I don't think you need to do another targeted Izzet ban. The removal of Cutter should significantly decrease the play rate. I'm not going to say that an Izzet deck is going to be unplayable, because there are still some powerful effects there. VV, Storm Chaser's Talent, this town ain't big enough, like that combination of cards. Maybe the Izzet decks move more towards like Cauldron plus VV, similar to what Paulo Vitor and Peta Sisium were doing at the Pro Tour. But I think those decks are a lot easier to attack. They're more susceptible to spot removal, especially if you're loading up on like Cauldron and VV combo. A Timely Abrade can very easily break that stuff up. So I'm okay with those decks for now. I think Corey Still Cutter goes, and that is basically the only thing that we need to do to address Izzet. Now, when it comes to Mono Red, a lot of people's biggest complaints about the format is that it's too fast. It's too punishing. If you stumble at all, like one missed beat, one missed land drop, one turn where you don't use all of your mana, you die on the spot. And a big part of that is the hyper aggressiveness of things like Izzet Prowess and Mono Red. Now, if you wanted to ban a card from Mono Red, there's a couple of options, right? Some people have discussed Monstrous Rage. This has been a card that's been on people's radar for basically ever since it's been printed, more so ever since the release of Bloomburrow with the Mice package. But Monstrous Rage is a messed up Magic card. You could look at something like any of the Mice, right? I think any of Heartfire Hero, Emberheart Challenger, or Manifold Mouse would all be somewhat reasonable considerations. Of the three, I think clearly the most powerful one is Manifold Mouse, because Double Strike in combination with Monstrous Rage, very powerful. Manifold Mouse, similar to Core Steel Cutter, is a 2-for-1 if you play it for 4 mana, so it allows the red decks to grind a little bit more. Manifold Mouse in combination with Challenger is effectively a Phyrexian Arena, where you're looking at an extra card every single turn. And when the red and Izzet decks have this combination of aggression and insane late game, that's when we run into a problem, because normally the way to beat red is just kill all their early stuff. But you can't exactly do that when they have Manifold Mouse being a 2-for-1, Emberheart Challenger being a 2-for-1, Soulstone Sanctuary being a land in the creature base. They have a lot of like just built-in 2-for-1s. But at the end of the day, I think you could maybe make an argument for Screaming Nemesis, although, I mean, it's a 3-drop. Come on. I understand it's annoying. The emblem is pretty stupid, but it's a 3-mana card. I think that one's okay for now. So I think the argument comes down to Monstrous Rage or Manifold Mouse. Manifold Mouse is an extremely powerful card. Double Strike, messed up, I get it. But a lot of people's issues with Manifold Mouse are specifically when combined with Monstrous Rage. I don't think Manifold Mouse is necessarily as good without Monstrous Rage. I understand you can still go Heartfire Hero on 1 into Manifold Mouse on 2. The thing is, when you're doing that, you are opening yourself up a little bit more to removal spells, because if you go Manifold Mouse on or Heartfire on 1, Manifold on 2, and they have a cut down for your Manifold Mouse, you now have a 1/1 that doesn't do anything. Maybe you have a copy of Rockface Village, but that's a big mana investment for next turn. That's 2 of your mana. You're not playing any more spells. So I think for me, it's a lot easier to interact with something like Manifold Mouse, because it is a 2 mana or sometimes 4 mana sorcery speed creature, as opposed to something like Monstrous Rage. Here's where my issue with Monstrous Rage mainly lies. So I've heard some arguments where pump spells being in standard are a good thing for the format. The thing you have to realize about Monstrous Rage is calling it just a pump spell is kind of disingenuous to what the card actually does. Yes, it is a pump spell technically because it pumps your creature's power. I understand that. But it's a 2-for-1 because it leaves around an aura that permanently gives your creature +1/+1 in trample. It is a Lava Spike because it gives your creature trample the turn they're chump blocking with their 1/1, so Lava Spike plus. It is very often a counter spell where some of the only removal spells that exist in the format that cost 1 mana are Burst Lightning, Cut Down, Lightning Strike, Nowhere to Run, and Monstrous Rage counters all of those. because in combination with either Prowess or Valiant, with either the +1/+1 trigger or the +1/+1 counter, plus the roll itself, you're just countering a lot of the removal spells. So if you go down the list of what Monstrous Rage does, Lava Spike, counter spell, +1/+1 trample permanently, and a way to save your creature from combat, like, it just does too much, right? On top of the fact that the big joke is that blocking is illegal in Standard. The people who say that aren't necessarily wrong, right? When's the last time that you were playing against Mono Red and they're attacking you with their 1-drop on turn 2, and even if you have like a 1-mana 2/2, it's just like, you just don't want to block because you can't afford to do that, because now in that situation, if you block, not only are you losing your creature straight up as a 1-for-1 trade to the Monstrous Rage, right? In that exact instance, you're down a creature, right? You've taken 3 or 4 damage, and they're left with whatever bonus they got off Valiant and the +1/+1 aura. That's effectively a 4-for-1 on a 1-mana instant. I don't know. It's just, in my opinion, I think Monstrous Rage does way too much for these decks. Being a consistent Valiant trigger, it can also be used defensively because, again, in combination with the Prowess and the roll token, you're getting +2 toughness on defense. So it's good defensively, it's good offensively, it's a counter spell, it's a Lava Spike, it's a removal spell. It just legitimately does everything. And I think it does all of those things at too efficient of a rate. Maybe if it was a sorcery, maybe if it didn't leave the roll behind, maybe if the roll didn't give trample. There's maybe some ways where this card could have been acceptable, but the card was already banned in Alchemy nonetheless, in a format where they can change cards. They looked at Monstrous Rage and they said, we don't know how to change this card in a way that we can capture the spirit of the card initially. And in a format where they can do rebalancing, they still banned it. And you know why they banned it? It's because the removal spells sucked. Look at the removal spells in Standard. They're not that good. Everybody who keeps saying, oh, you can beat Mono Red by playing more removal, it's like, what other removal do you want us to play? They all suck. Cut Down is bad because of Monstrous Rage. Like, sure, the 2-mana kill spells are okay, like Go for the Throat, Shoot the Sheriff, maybe that stuff is fine, but when you're on the draw against Mono Red, you can't afford to have your first spell be cast on turn 2, because you're just going to die. And you know why you're going to die? Because they have Monstrous Rage. So, I think all of that said, I feel like I made my points pretty clear. Personally, I would ban Monstrous Rage. I think it is, to me, very clearly the problematic card. It just does too much for too efficient. So right now, we're at Core Steel Cutter, Monstrous Rage, gone. Now, the big question is, do you need or want to do anything else? I think you could potentially make an argument to remove something from Omniscience. I'm a little bit more skeptical about that because a lot of the cards in the Omniscience deck are rotating. Now, I understand Abuelo's Awakening and Omniscience themselves are not rotating. Meringue River Regent, Roiling Dragonstorm, also not rotating. But we're losing a good amount of the self-mill stuff like Founding, Philagi Archaeologist, Moment of Truth, Ephara's Dispersal. All of that stuff is gone. But I guess I wouldn't necessarily shed a tear if Omniscience was banned. Personally, I don't really understand what they were doing putting Omniscience in Standard for 5 years. Because, like, when have you ever seen people put Omniscience into play or put Omniscience in their deck for good? Every single time you see a deck with Omniscience, it's just trying to cheat it into play, and the entire goal and the premise of the deck is just do this one thing every single time over and over again. You know, you could argue maybe combo decks are good for Standard, but I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced that we need Omniscience in Standard for 5 years. I don't think personally they're going to do anything to Omniscience now, but again, I wouldn't necessarily be unhappy if Omniscience got banned, or maybe Abuelo's Awakening. And that leaves up the Beanstock, which is a card that a lot of people have been discussing for quite some time now. Again, this one is a little tough for me. Domain hasn't really been on the radar at all ever since Matt Nass won the Pro Tour Aether Drift with it because, well, Tarkir Dragonstorm happened and Corey Steel Cutter. So there's maybe a worry where if you remove too much of the aggressive elements from the format, that Domain is now doesn't really have a natural predator or a natural check in place, which I understand. The thing that I push back on with Domain is that a lot of the pieces, like it's basically going to be non-existent post-rotation. The biggest draw to playing a deck like that is Leyline Binding. 1 mana removal spell that draws a card off Beanstock. Once Binding rotates, maybe they switch to stuff like Ride's End. You do still have Overlords plus Beanstock, but we're losing Zur, so you have less of a reason to build your deck around like Overlords and Beanstock. Maybe they become a Una deck, but again, Una it's much less of a commitment than Zur because you have to put the cards in your graveyard so you can be attacked on different axes. So I would not be surprised if at some point down the road Up the Beanstalk became a problem, but for now, I think it's going to be okay, especially with the rotation of Zur and Leyline Binding. But don't worry, this video is not over. We have one more card to discuss. I know a lot of people may have thought that was the end of the video, but I have a bit of a hot take here. So the most played card at the Pro Tour was not Monstrous Rage, was not Corey Steel Cutter. The most played card at the Pro Tour was Stockup. And Stockup was, if I recall correctly, I believe in over 60% of the decks. We have not seen a play rate like that since, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the closest to that might have been Oko, with just one single card being played in over 60% of decks. Now, I understand. Stockup, when you look at the card, it feels pretty innocuous. It doesn't look like a broken card. The issue that I have with Stockup is that it just facilitates so much. It's good in control decks. All you care about is getting like removal spells. You're looking for sweepers, you're looking for additional removal spells, maybe one piece of top end. It's good in control decks. It's good in aggro because it's just the single best way to reload your hand, right? In terms of you dump your hand, you stock up, find more gas, maybe more cantrips, stock up into stock up, rebuying stock up with talent. It's the best in combo decks because it just finds you your 2 combo pieces. So if it's the best in aggro and the best in control and the best in combo, what's competing with it? There's no other draw spells that, like, basically, when you're building a deck that has blue mana in it, you have to question yourself. You basically just start the deck with 4 copies of Stockup. Now, I know a lot of the Omniscience decks aren't playing 4 copies anymore, which I, to myself, find a little bit strange. But that also just might be the way they're constructed. They have too many other 3-drops. They don't have time. But once you weaken Izzet Prowess and Mono Red, I wouldn't be surprised if those decks started playing Stockups. I don't necessarily know if Stockup is a problem right now, but personally, I just think that it's too good at what it does. It being just a way to find anything that you're looking for in combo, control, aggro, mid-range. Every single deck that plays blue mana is going to want to play Stockup. It's never going to be bad in any blue deck. And you could argue that maybe the card is not super problematic in terms of what it's promoting, right? It's not like any of these other cards like Corey Steel, Monstrous Rage, Omniscience, but it's kind of a facilitator to all of that stuff. So I'm just saying, I think Stockup should be on the watch list. I wouldn't necessarily hit it now, but I wouldn't shed a tear if it was gone. So that's probably my hot take of the day. I don't think they'll ban it right now, but wouldn't hate it if they did. So that is going to conclude today's discussion video. So TL, if you want just a list of my predictions, Corey Steel Cutter, Monstrous Rage, gone for sure. And then I guess the watch list would include Omniscience, Up the Beanstalk, and Stockup. There's maybe other conversations where you could, again, talk about like Screaming Nemesis, This Town Ain't Big Enough, Storm Chasers, Hopeless Nightmare. But I want to see those cards come back into the metagame once we have sort of remove the problem of Izzet Prowess and Mono Red. So would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment in the comment section, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.